Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it's Monday, and I told you guys yesterday in the live stream I was so busy I wasn't able to film this video on the day I normally do. So once again, it is Monday. I guess this week it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you, as my viewers and subscribers, about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, current events, the news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. And this week's question kind of deals with maybe some people that are getting a little bit pessimistic about our court system. I know I am. And this really is in relation to a lot of these anti-gun measures that were recently voted on in the past election, and many states right now that are pushing anti-gun laws as fast as they possibly can, even in a post-Bruen world. And of course, the only remedy we have as civilians and lawful and legal gun owners is to go to the courts, because the courts are supposed to be neutral arbiters of the law, regardless of the judge's political opinions. They have to look at the law, or they're charged with looking at the law and deciding, is this legal? Is this constitutional? Does it stand up to Supreme Court precedent and case law? And many times, well, let's just say the courts have been letting us down. This is one of those things that has kind of been the glue that has held this nation together. We have two generally opposing factions, and these courts have always had the respect of both sides, where we can go to them and they are supposed to be neutral. Now, granted, there's always going to be disagreements, but these judges in the past generally have upheld the Constitution. And I say generally because I know we can always point to certain cases, but we've always had a certain amount of faith in them. And really, our nation and all governments run on faith. You have to have faith that the institutions that are supposed to enforce the law and interpret the law are doing so in a constitutional and reasonable manner. However, as of late, as I said, we're starting to get a little bit worried about what some of these courts are doing. So that's kind of what this week's poll question is about. So let's just dive right into this week's poll question and then get your results. For the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, number 100. Wow, we've made it to 100. This week's question is about your predictions on the current litigation and lawsuits working through the courts to overturn many of the most egregious anti-gun laws in the country, like California's handgun roster, Maryland's assault weapons ban, New York's concealed carry laws, and now Oregon's ballot measure 114. As time goes on in this post-Bruen world, we are seeing anti-gun politicians and attorney generals trying to wiggle around and wordplay the clear meaning of the Supreme Court's decision on the Second Amendment. We see disingenuous lawyers doing their best to convince judges at all levels to ignore clear violations of the history and text analysis the Supreme Court laid out to adjudicate Second Amendment decisions. As these decisions and cases are being slow-walked by states and courts that are historically anti-gun, like the Ninth Circuit, do you have any hope that these judges will overturn these laws, or will they try to uphold them under questionable interpretations of the Heller and Bruen decisions? Now, I just want to say first and foremost that I am not an attorney, but I like to follow firearms cases. I actually read many of these appellate level and Supreme Court cases that deal with firearms, or anything that deals or potentially could deal with rulemaking and the like. And so I like to kind of feel, while I'm not an attorney, as I mentioned, I'm slightly educated on this topic simply because I follow it and want to stay informed. And over the years, I have been very dismayed at some judges and how they try to figure out how to uphold these laws. In my opinion, one of the most egregious decisions I have ever heard of came out of the state of Illinois. Now, I don't actually remember the exact case, but I remember the judge's reasoning and ruling, and it had to deal with a local ordinance that banned assault weapons. This is back when they amended their firearms law and allowed for a short short period of time certain municipalities to have assault weapons bans before the greater law went into effect. And of course, these were all fought in court. But there was one, and I believe it was a state judge, who upheld the assault weapons ban, and he flat out said in his decision, "I believe this is unconstitutional, both under the Constitution of the state and the nation. However, I am going to allow the law to be upheld because it makes people feel safer." And that was justification enough under the old two-step approach, which allowed him to adjudicate the case under intermediate scrutiny. Now, the Supreme Court says you can't judge under intermediate scrutiny these cases anymore. But this was one of the most egregious and unreasonable decisions I had ever heard. He literally laid out why it was not constitutional, why it violated the Second Amendment. But he said because it makes people feel safe, he was going to uphold it. He admitted that this law will probably do nothing to make the public safer. But because people felt safe, he was going to uphold it. I couldn't believe it. And this is where my faith in the court system began to fail. Because as I mentioned in the opening of this video, we want judges to adjudicate cases fairly. We want them to look at this and take their political opinions out. They have to look at Supreme Court precedent, case law, and history and go, well, I might disagree with this law. However, I'm going to uphold it or disagree with it depending on the actual facts of the case. But now judges are like, well, I really want this to go into effect. So I'm going to try to figure out some type of wordplay to make sure that I'm going to be anti-gun. What many judges also do is pervert the old Heller decision, where Justice Scalia said it is lawful to ban weapons that are dangerous and unusual. But what did attorneys and judges do? Well, they separated those two words. Scalia said dangerous and unusual. But what they tried to do is go, well, AR-15s are not unusual because they're commonly owned. However, they are dangerous. Therefore, we're going to use one of those words and justify a ban. And of course, that's not what the case said. It didn't say dangerous or unusual. It was dangerous and unusual. And of course, using all of this wordplay, the courts are just trying to uphold these egregious anti-gun laws. Another tactic that we're seeing right now, especially in California, in a post-Bruen world, is all of these cases have been kicked back down to the district courts. And the Ninth Circuit is trying to slow walk this. Now, I think what's really happening is they're trying to take as much time as possible before these laws are going to get overturned to give them time enough to try to figure out some type of clever wordplay to say, oh, yeah, the assault weapons ban, magazine capacity, even the concealed carry laws that are totally against and ruled out against in the Bruen decision from the Supreme Court can be upheld under some other reasoning. Another great example is the Protection and Lawful in Commerce Act. You guys know this is the law that the anti-gunners have wanted repealed for a long time, and it protects gun manufacturers from being sued if somebody uses their gun in an unlawful manner. Now, of course, they want to sue the gun companies into existence, but they always say it shields them from lawsuits. It actually doesn't. If you buy a gun from, let's say, a company like Ruger or Colt or CZ, and that gun is critically defective and hurts you because it malfunctions and maybe blows up in your hand, well, you actually can sue them for building a faulty product. They are not completely immune from liability, but it's the same immunity that we want to give them. Like, for example, if some drunk driver drives a Ford Mustang, you can't go and sue Ford for making the Mustang. Well, you can't sue a gun company because a criminal used their gun in an atrocious act. But of course, these clever lawyers and judges have figured out a way around it. Well, gun companies advertise. Well, if they have any type of deceptive advertising or advertise it in some way that might be construed in a tactical manner, well, now you can sue them. And not just sue them for a couple $1 million. We're talking billions of dollars. Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely frivolous. And this is where the courts and the judges are letting us down. Now, as you guys can probably tell, I'm pretty dismayed. I'm very disappointed because my faith in the legal system is dropping day by day as these attorneys and these judges are trying to figure out a way to have us live in some type of post-constitutional world where the Constitution says what it does. Supreme Court cases say what they do. But you know what? Because I feel whatever, we're not going to follow that. Or that's what we really want. The Constitution really doesn't matter. Well, I always say there's a mechanism to change the Constitution if you don't want something in there. If you don't like the Second Amendment, we can repeal it. We can do it through an Article 5 convention. Now, I'm not saying I want that. There's also another method where Congress can vote on it and then 37 states have to ratify it. But you know why they don't do that? Because they can't reach that threshold. They can't come anywhere close to it. But at least that's the way to do it. Don't do it through wordplay and clever writing, to completely ignore centuries of precedent just because you want an assault weapons ban to go into effect. Well, maybe I'm giving you guys a little bit too much insight into what I think before I should, but let's get your results first, and then I'll give you guys my opinions on each one of these answers. With only 433 votes this week, which by the way is my fault because I put the poll up in the middle of the week when normally I do it on the weekend, so it's all my fault on why we got so few votes. We have, yes, courts will have no option but to throw out these laws, 23%. Neutral, courts will continue to delay for years and never rule, 48%. No, judges will defy the Supreme Court's instructions and uphold these laws, 27%, and something else, explain in the comments, 2%. And you know, it's results like this sometimes that kind of surprise me because I know I personally am feeling a little bit defeated by the courts, and sometimes in my comments and the other people that I talk about, they seem to be defeated as well. But we seem to think that it's going to be more neutral, or most of you guys do. I can tell you that I don't, but this really did kind of surprise me. I kind of thought that the third option was going to win by an overwhelming majority. But let's go through each one of these and let's talk about them. I'll give you guys my opinions. We have yes, courts will have no option but to throw out these laws. Now, 23% of you are pretty optimistic. Now, I do know that there are judges out there that are probably going to do this. They're going to go, well, I might agree or disagree with an assault weapons ban. But you know what? The Supreme Court told me what I am supposed to do. And they actually might do it because they're honorable people. They realize what their position is supposed to be. You know, not every appellate court judge is going to be corrupt. They're not going to try to inject their politics into their rulings. There are honorable people out there, and they can even put in their rulings, hey, I don't agree with this, but this is what I'm told to do by the Supreme Court. And if you want to overturn this, here's how to do it. That's perfectly fine, but they're supposed to follow the rule of law, and some will. So 23% of you guys think that's the case, and I think in some jurisdictions we're going to see that happen. Then we have neutral. Courts will continue to delay for years and never rule. Now, maybe the reason this got the most votes is because that's actually the play many of these circuit courts are going with. Instead of the Ninth Circuit, when they get all these cases back from the Supreme Court saying, you guys need to re-adjudicate these, they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to throw it back down to the district court. So that all has to get ruled on. They all have to have cases. And of course, as soon as the district courts rule, they're going to be appealed back to the Ninth Circuit. They'll do a 3-judge panel. The whole system goes through the process again. And then whoever wins or loses, it's all going to get appealed to the Ninth Circuit en banc, which means a larger panel. And then the whole thing happens again. And during that time, they're going to try to find some type of wiggle room to get out of it so we can say, yes, the Supreme Court definitely said we can ban concealed carry, we can ban open carry, we can ban guns, more than assault, we can ban everything. The Supreme Court said it because they have some type of funny wordplay. So a lot of you guys think that's what's going on, which right now I do think is the mechanism the anti-gunners are working with. But long term, they're just trying to find those judges which are getting appointed now by the president in these district courts to uphold these laws using some kind of weird justification. And of course, what is our retaliation? I use retaliation in a political sense, not an actual figurative sense where we would go out and hurt people. But what is the remedy when a judge clearly violates Supreme Court rulings and precedent? Nothing. nothing can happen because they're lifetime appointments and they can just say, well, I ruled the wrong way. And you cannot sue an individual if they're acting in their capacity as a representative of the government. So a judge working on behalf in the government cannot be sued if they defy the Supreme Court. It's crazy. I know. It's really weird. So that's probably what's going to happen. Then we have no, judges will defy SCOTUS instructions and uphold these laws. And that's what I would have voted for if I could have voted in this poll. I know that many of you were hoping that I was going to give you some type of rosy outlook for the future, but I honestly think that we've reached a point in our country where we are post-constitutional. Judges do not feel that they have to follow the Constitution or the Supreme Court if they're part of the lower courts. They can just defy them and be like, what you guys going to do? That's right, absolutely nothing. You can't remove me from office. I'm here for life, and I'm just going to give you guys the big middle finger. And that's the way it is because they're all political appointments now. And in our world, everything is political. Things that didn't used to be political are now political, and that includes judges at the lower levels. And then we have something else explained in the comments. So, as I said, overall, you guys kind of feel like everything's going to be slow walk, but maybe we'll win, maybe we won't. But I know for me personally, I don't have a lot of hopes anymore because I don't think the courts are acting in good faith. But that's just my personal opinion. So let's see what you guys had to say this time with this week's top rated comments. I'm really curious to see if anybody agrees with me. And with our top rated comment of the week, we have Two Gun Kitty, the catnip outlaw, who says, will be a mix. Depending on the court, the judges hearing them will dictate how these cases will be handled. Some get bumped up to the court chain and some will not, but will always take time. And really, once again, I do think that is the strategy of the anti-gunners and many of the anti-gun judges is to delay, because the pro-gun groups that are fighting this have to spend more time, money, and resources having to fight these in court. And they're hoping that they're just going to go away or run out of money or run out of energy or just give up. This might be a war of attrition. They're just waiting for one person finally to give up, just to go on and on and on. And finally, just because enough time has gone by, one side gives up. Who knows? Maybe that is the strategy. Then we have Joe Quinn who says, there's the what should be the right thing to do, and then there's the what will most likely happen. And that's what I was saying. Our courts are supposed to be above the law when it comes to interpretation and their political views. You could have a rabid anti-gun person as a judge, but their job is not to try to rule in an anti-gun way. It is their job to look at the Supreme Court and the law and the Constitution and go, well, I might disagree with it, but I'm going to allow the pro-gun side to win because that's what the law currently says. But do you really think that's going to happen? No, because as I said, everything is political. It's what should happen, but not likely what will. Then we have Joe Morgan who said, I don't have high hopes true freedom will ever ring without massive change, and that starts with us. And that is true. And what that change is, I don't know. And what we need to do, I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit of a hopeless adventure for us all. I don't know. Sometimes I just get a little bit down. Who knows why? But I know a lot of people want the upbeat stuff. I do get a little bit pessimistic from time to time. And maybe I shouldn't be. Then we have Brian Edgerton who says, we have seen some take it to heart as others try to play with the meanings of words and judgment as stated. Just look at Oregon and the 114 case. And absolutely. So I think Brian has the right idea and shares my sentiment when it comes to these judges. It's all wordplay. As I mentioned, dangerous and unusual, or dangerous or unusual. They completely forget that middle word that says and. If the gun is dangerous and unusual, Heller says you can ban it. If it's dangerous but not unusual, you can't. But they're like, it's one of those words, we'll ban it anyway. And then finally we have Little D. Interesting name. I don't know if I'd be advertising that. I have no faith anymore. Better buy what you want while you still can. And yeah, that's probably the best advice all the time. I'm not saying go out and panic buy, but if you see what you want for a good price, go and get it now. That's some great advice right there. So, that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. And I hope I didn't depress you guys. I know I was a little bit on the pessimistic side, but that's just how I feel about this stuff, as my faith in government institutions has waned in the past few years. I just don't think the people that are in charge of them are truly neutral anymore. It is a war. It's a constant culture war, and they will do anything to win. So even if you're in a position where you are supposed to be neutral, you try to be as political as you possibly can, and then play it off as, oh yeah, I'm totally neutral. It's a joke. And that's one of the things that I worry about when it comes to the future of our country, because we have two opposing factions that are pretty much equally matched when it comes to size. Whether or not you think one side has a little bit more of a majority or not, but the country is pretty much separated, split down the middle. That's it. And when one side is taking over and ramming down everything they possibly can in an extreme way, eventually the other side is going to go, no. And I don't know what that looks like, but I do get worried about it. So once again, that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. What a great interaction and dialogue with you guys, and I hope that we continue this in the comments section below. But if you guys want to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. I will put a link down there. Go over there, see what the poll is about, vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comments of the week. So let me know what you guys think. Am I too pessimistic? Am I too down on this? Do I not have enough faith in our institutions? I would love to know what you think. So, as always, thanks for watching.